Emily Norton, West Townsend. I guess I'll tell you a little bit about myself first and how I got involved with this whole pipeline thing, and some of the main issues that I am grappling with and that I'm trying to communicate to everyone I can. I have lived in West Townsend now for about 13 years. I bought a little farm on 3.5 acres. It has grown to 6.5 acres now. I bought another little parcel. I'm surrounded by Willard Brook State Forest. And I remember when I found this property, the first thing I did was go to town hall to make sure all the land around me was protected and was going to stay natural for eternity, pretty much. And so this place is my little piece of heaven. About 12 years ago or 11 years ago, I started an organization called Friends of Willard Brook. And I did that because I wanted to share what a beautiful area this is. And as a biology and environmental science teacher, I know that the only way to really help people understand the value of the natural environment is to get them out into it. So Friends of Willard Brook formed, and we provided natural history programs and recreational programs in the state forest, in Townsend and surrounding towns. My professional career ended about 3 years ago when I retired from teaching. I started out teaching mainly biology, but that expanded to teaching environmental science. I started the environmental science program at Wayland High School. And teaching environmental science was really rewarding. It was an extra course that seniors could take. It was a multi-level course, so it was college prep and honors kids. And lots and lots of students signed up for the course because they knew they got to go outside. And we also each year tried to work on an environmental problem and help make a solution for that problem. So about 3 years ago, I retired thinking I was taking that hat off and putting it up on the rack and just going to wake up every morning thinking, what am I going to do today? And for almost a year now, what am I going to do today has become, well, how am I going to try to stop this pipeline today? There are so many reasons why this pipeline should not happen. I almost don't know where to begin. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my teacher hat back on and talk about some of the major themes of environmental science and making wise environmental decisions. Number one is sustainability and what that term really means. Okay, for us to live sustainably, we've got to do two things. We have to make sure that we take resources from the environment at a slow enough rate that the environment can put those resources back. When we use fossil fuels as our energy sources, we are not doing that. Fossil fuels are called fossil fuels because it takes them thousands of years to form. And so by us using oil or natural gas or coal, we are taking resources at a faster rate than they can be replaced. So we will run out of those resources. The other part of living sustainably is that we put wastes into the environment at a rate that the environment can absorb without being harmed. And by burning fossil fuels, we are putting carbon dioxide into the air at a rate that plants can't take it back out. And as a result, we're increasing the amount of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, but also methane. Methane is another word for natural gas. And natural gas leaks from the fracking wells, it leaks from the pipes. Natural gas is a greater greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. As a result, humans are causing climate change, and that is pretty much not even debatable anymore. So for a major pipeline that is permanent infrastructure to be built to continue our use of fossil fuels, that is just not making a decision that will lead our civilization towards sustainability. So that's number one. Number two, well, so sort of to finish that up, what we need to do as far as energy sources is use sustainable energy sources, such as solar and wind. Okay? Those will not remove resources faster than they can be replaced, and they do not add harmful waste to the environment. So those are the sustainable solutions that we need to move towards. So that's number one. Number two is we are entering another major period of extinction on our planet. And back when the dinosaurs went extinct, that was a major period of extinction, but that wasn't caused by people. The one we are entering now is being caused by people. And there are 6 major reasons that we are entering this period of mass extinctions. And 5 of those reasons are being exacerbated or would be exacerbated if this pipeline is built. Number 1, habitat destruction. Okay, through Massachusetts, this pipeline is projected to destroy about 3,000 acres of habitat. Okay, habitat destruction is a cause for major extinctions. Habitat fragmentation, or some environmental scientists call that islandization. Okay, what habitat fragmentation does is it takes large chunks of habitat and chops them up into smaller pieces. David Quammen, in Song of the Dodo, in his book Song of the Dodo, wrote about taking a large, beautiful Persian rug. And he said, what would happen if we cut it up into 1-foot squares? Would we end up having lots of beautiful small Persian rugs? No, we would end up with pieces of rug that are fraying at the edges, that are falling apart. And that's what happens when we break apart large pieces of habitat. They start fraying. Smaller habitats cannot withstand disturbance as well. They aren't as resilient to environmental disturbances. And as a result, species are being lost. Some other causes of mass extinctions are pollution. The pipeline, if it is built, is going to be carrying not only natural gas, but it will be carrying chemicals that are used in the fracking process. And those chemicals can leak from the pipe and can poison our water supply and can poison the air. Pollution is another reason that we are entering this period of major extinction. Climate change is another reason. And in the past, we've gone through periods of warming and periods of cooling. The problem with this period of climate change is that it's happening so fast that wildlife, living things, cannot adapt, because adaptation occurs over many generations and they can't speed up. They're generations of reproduction fast enough. Also, we've produced barriers for migrating to more suitable climates, whether it's cities or highways or corridors for the pipeline. Some other causes of mass extinctions are invasive species. And by chopping this line through habitat, we are allowing more invasive species to come in. And the natural species, the species that have been living here, are not able to compete with the invasive species that don't have natural enemies in this area. So this pipeline would contribute to the period of mass extinction. A lot of people say, well, this pipeline is just a bridge until we get to more renewable types of energy. And you don't build permanent infrastructure for something that's meant to be temporary. So that makes no sense at all. I'm also reminded of a story in another book written by Daniel Quinn. The book was called Ishmael. And in that book, he talked about the first aeronauts, the people who were trying to figure out how to make flying machines. And a lot of those people didn't understand the major physics concepts that would allow them to fly. But they made these contraptions, and the contraptions had wings that would flap and pedals. So the first aeronauts would pedal their flying machines off of a cliff, and they'd be pedaling along, and at first they would feel like, wow, they're flying. They were in the air, and wasn't it beautiful? And then they would look down on the ground, and they would notice that the ground was getting terribly close. And as they got closer, they would notice that there were other flying machines broken apart in pieces, littered on the ground. And so what did the aeronauts do that were still flying? They would pedal faster. But pedaling faster didn't work. And a lot of this pipeline hype reminds me of that pedaling faster. Well, if we have a need for more energy, should we do? We should do more of the same. Well, that's not going to work. And so what that first aeronaut didn't understand was he was not living sustainably. And he was not following the rules of physics to keep his flying machine up in the air. And so he was heading for a crash. We aren't living sustainably. And for us to just do more of the same is going to head us towards a similar crash. The other similarity between that aeronaut story and what I'm learning about today is the whole FERC process. Now, FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And one of the things that Kinder Morgan has been talking about in all of their town meetings is how, they have to go through this rigorous procedure through FERC before they can get their project promoted or allowed, before they can move forward. And so we thought, that would be helpful. But what I've learned about the FERC process is that the FERC process seems, to me anyways, to be broken. And our legislators are asking that FERC do their process thoroughly. And to me, that just reminds me of that aeronaut pedaling faster and faster. If the FERC process is broken, doing a broken process thoroughly isn't going to mean that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, and that if the pipeline is allowed, it would be safe or it would be a wise decision. Some examples of where I see this FERC process broken. Kinder Morgan is supposed to propose alternate routes for its pipeline. Well, if a company wants a particular route, the alternate routes they choose are obviously going to be bad alternate routes because they don't want those alternate routes to be chosen. They want the route that they want. And it's Kinder Morgan that has to choose the alternate routes. That doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't make sense to me because the pipeline, no matter where it goes, is not a sustainable solution to our energy puzzle. Another problem with FERC is that FERC requires that Kinder Morgan propose alternate solutions to providing energy to New England. Well, Kinder Morgan can propose solar, or they might say, well, we need to look at hydropower, or we need to look at wind power. The problem with FERC is that FERC won't look at a combination of alternate solutions. It only will look at one at a time and discount each one separately. Or, for instance, FERC won't look at private solar installations on people's roofs because the reason they give for not looking at that is that FERC doesn't have any regulatory authority over that. Therefore, they don't consider it. But if they don't consider all combinations of alternative energy sources, and they don't consider energy solutions that they don't have control power over, then they're not looking at all the solutions that are out there. In a similar way, they are not doing an environmental impact analysis appropriately. For instance, they don't consider what is being carried in the pipe. They don't consider the leaks of the methane or the leaks of the toxic fracking chemicals and what that might do to our groundwater. They don't consider the source of what goes through the pipe. So all they consider is the environmental impact of putting a pipe in the ground. And so it's like they are horses with those blinders. So they're only looking at part of the environmental impact. They're not looking at the whole. Another issue with environmental impact is when they look at the alternative routes, they pretty much take a chart and just count. Well, how many wetlands does Route A go through? And how many wetlands does Route B and C and D go through? And how many endangered species habitats does each of the routes go through? And then they choose the route that has the lowest number. But numbers isn't the only part of an environmental impact study. You've got to look at the quality of the wetlands that the pipeline is going through. You've got to look at whether these wetlands have already been impacted by something else. For instance, in one study, they looked at the potential of the pipeline going along a major highway versus going through greenfield, going through intact habitat. And because the highway route would cross more wetlands, they decided that the route of the pipeline going along a major highway would have a greater environmental impact. That makes no sense to me at all, because that highway has degraded the adjacent habitats already, and they didn't look at that. So their environmental impact analysis makes no sense. Their economic impact assessments make no sense either. For instance, they look at the economic impact of no pipeline at all. And they discount that immediately because they say, well, that's not going to have any economic benefit. What they're not counting there is what is known as environmental capital, which an environmental capital is all the stuff, the goods, and all the services, all the processes that occur in natural ecosystems that we get for free. And the problem with getting things for free is that we often take them for granted. 3,000 acres of natural habitat being destroyed to build this pipeline would have a negative economic impact. And the FERC process does not measure all the loss of ecosystem goods and services. So some of the things I'm talking about would be climate regulation. Natural ecosystems help prevent highs and lows of temperature swings. Keeping our water clean. And we need water to survive. That is a service that natural ecosystems do for us. And if we had to clean dirty water in order to make it drinkable for us, that would cost so much money. FERC isn't considering that. So my message to legislators would be, we need to do more than ask FERC to do a thorough process. We need to ask FERC to do a better process. We need to fix FERC first. Try saying that 3 times fast. But we really do need to fix the process by which we analyze the effects of a pipeline going through greenfield area before we choose to put in permanent infrastructure for something that's supposed to be a temporary fix. We can do better than that.
Can you talk about the compression station that would be near here?
Right. I first got involved in this whole pipeline issue when I was told that the pipeline might go through Willard Brook State Forest, which is near and dear to me, and through people's backyards. It never really threatened my backyard, but with my love of the environment, the earth is my backyard. And so I needed to really get to work on this. And in the first meetings that Kinder Morgan had, they said they weren't expecting to put any compressor stations anywhere other than in Wright, New York, and then one in Dracut. So at the beginning and at the end. When they finally did their pre-filing with FERC, lo and behold, there's a compressor station proposed to go somewhere in Townsend, somewhere in the western part of Townsend, and then they have this big swath of land that could go all the way to our conservation land called Old Meeting House Park. In addition, there is a lateral coming off of the main pipeline going south into Fitchburg. So it's really likely that the compressor station would be placed just before the lateral, which is about a mile from where I live. This compressor station would be huge. It would be one of the largest compressor stations in the country. And it would have to off-gas chemicals and methane on a regular basis. It would create huge amounts of noise. They would have to take about 60 acres of forest in order to produce this. So it would create huge amounts of noise. They would also have to have permanent lighting there to make sure that there's very little disturbance of that area. It's a target for terrorism. It would totally change the nature of our town. Really, if they're going to put the main pipeline through Townsend, a lateral through Townsend, the compressor station through Townsend, you can pretty much destroy the quality of life for the people who live in Townsend. They claim, oh, the property values won't go down. Well, there's a house on New Fitchburg Road that was for sale. The man had a purchase and sale agreement all signed, and then the buyer found out that the pipeline was going close by and a compressor station might be near that house, and the people pulled out of the sale. And who could blame them? People didn't move to this area to have a gas pipeline that pollutes, that has safety issues, compressor stations. We didn't move here for that.
And how close are you to the New Hampshire state line?
I live about 8 miles from the New Hampshire state line. And there are rumors that Kinder Morgan may be changing their preferred route so that it goes through Western Mass and then heads north at the Connecticut River, then goes through Mason, New Hampshire, just north of me, Brookline, New Hampshire, and then eventually goes down to Dracut again. Certainly, I'm breathing a sigh of relief for Townsend, but that doesn't mean the pipeline should go through. The pipeline shouldn't be in anybody's backyard. It's not the right solution for anybody. In addition, the size of this pipeline that has been proposed, it's clear that a lot of the gas would be for export. And the whole climate change thing, it doesn't matter whether methane is leaking here or in Europe or in Asia, or whether it's being burned in any of those places. There is one atmosphere, and climate change is a global issue. It's not something where Massachusetts can claim, oh, we're cutting down our greenhouse gases by so much. If we are helping to transport methane to some other place on Earth where it's going to be burned, climate change is going to affect us all no matter where those fossil fuels are burned.
Thank you.
You're welcome.